The Chargers offense looked abysmal when they matched up with the Texans in last year's playoffs, but that team didn't have Omarion Hampton.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 10 seasons, but this is our 8th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day as part of the #1 sports podcast network. David, what do we got today?
Daniel, in order for the Chargers to beat the Texans on Saturday, they are going to need a big performance from their rookie running back, Omarion Hampton. He has to be heavily involved in the game plan and very effective. And Justin Herbert's had this game circled. He did not forget it. He has to have his best. You know he's going to be laser focused for this one. And on defense, the Chargers have to completely shut the Texans offense down, and I believe they have the capability to do that in this game. And of course, we're going to finish things up with our bold and game predictions.
And man, I don't know if I know at this point who I think is going to win this one. Obviously, early in the week, we don't know who's playing yet, but it's going to be tough. Today's episode is sponsored by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. And David, I think this is one of those games where Omarion Hampton has to show why he was a first-round pick. And I think especially when you're looking at the team they're going up against and the history that you share with them, which is them basically humiliating you in the 2024 playoffs and shutting your offense down to where it looked like they shouldn't even have been on the same field as that defense outside of Ladd McConkey, right? But I do think that when you look at the Texans defense, they can be run on a little bit. Like if they have a weaker part of what is probably the best defense in the league, that would be it. But it's not going to be a cakewalk by any means. But I also just think you look at this game and you're like, okay, what's different, right? What do the Chargers have this year that they didn't have last year? And I think probably the biggest thing they have going for them this year is the fact that they have Omarion Hampton, who might be able to match the physicality with that defense. And I think the Chargers absolutely have to have an efficient running game if they want to run a successful offense, which they couldn't do last time around.
Yeah, and part of running a successful offense is being able to get into better down and distance situations. And that means running the football. Like you have to get some positive yardage on the ground on first and second down so that you're in third and manageable. It's a lot harder to rush the passer when you're in 3rd and 3 and 3rd and 4, as opposed to 3rd and 6 and plus. So Omarion Hampton's really come alive the last 3 weeks. He's averaged over 4 yards a carry. He has at least one run of 18 yards or more in each of the last 3 games. In this one, I want to see him get 25 plus touches. I want to see him really impose his will. He's a very difficult guy to tackle. He rarely ever goes down on first contact. He's always breaking through, and he just needs the smallest of creases. And if he's able to get to the outside, he can turn the jets on, and he is very hard to catch. I want Omarion Hampton to be highly involved in this game plan for Saturday.
Well, especially when you look at their last game, because you wonder, how did the Raiders hang in there with the Texans? And the reason it was is because Ashton Jeanty had 2 60-plus yard touchdowns, one receiving and one rushing, and a total of 188 yards, which was easily his career high so far, after basically having less than that amount of yards in the 3 games leading up to it combined. So he had a career day. You're looking also for Omarion Hampton to kind of bring those explosives, because it's harder to do that against, it's much harder to do it if you're trying to do it against someone like a Derek Stingley, right, who had 5 pass breakups in the last time these two teams matched up. But I do think when you look at last year, 18 carries for 50 yards, you've talked about it, 2.8 yards per carry. It just has to be better than that, and they have to be able to stick to it, because if not, their offense could implode on itself if they get stuck in those 3rd and long situations. And the Chargers, during this 4-game win streak, have rushed for over 152 yards per game over those last 4 games, and the Texans have allowed over 114 yards per game over their last 5. That's not a huge number, but if the Chargers could get to 115, 120, 130 yards, at least that means something is working for them offensively, and I think helps the passing game out a lot too. But speaking of which, I think for Justin Herbert, obviously in this game, to have, the thoughts of the 4 interception performance, and he didn't shy away from it at the podium. Maybe like we have seen him a little bit in years past where he kind of just say, hey, we're not thinking about it. We don't think about it anymore. We totally dropped it. It seemed like a little bit of a tone switch today when he was at the podium where it's just like, hey, like, you can't run from it. Like, I did think about it during the offseason. It did follow me a little bit. Yeah. And I think there's just 2 distinct things that Justin Herbert has to be better at in this game than he was in that game. And the first thing is obvious, taking care of the football. Like, I think that Texans offense can be slowed a lot by this Chargers defense. Definitely. But the Chargers offense cannot set them up, right? Like, he had 4 interceptions last time. One of them clearly wasn't his fault, bounce off the hands of Will Dissly. One of them's in garbage time when you're down 3 scores with 3 minutes left and he's just chucking it up there. But either way, like, it has to be better than that. You can't help out the offense on the other side. And the second thing is he has to find a way to take it upon himself at times and run the football. That was our biggest takeaway the last time these 2 teams matched up, was just you can't see the offense struggle that much and then also look up and see that Justin Herbert never ran the ball. 0 carries,
not once,
for 0 yards in that game. So obviously you don't want him to have to scramble all the time, but it feels like that is one thing he can do a lot better this time around. Even if it wasn't all his fault, there's definitely those 2 things he can improve on, and that'll give him a good chance.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely know that he knows that he has to do a better job taking care of the football. Like, he can't put it in harm's way as many times as he did before. That's for sure going to be a concentrated effort on his part. And I agree with you completely on running the football. I mean, obviously last year we have to remember that he was dealing with 2 bad ankles, right? Throughout the entirety of the season. So that was part of it. But this year it is a big part of his game. He's second in the NFL in rushing yards with 461, just behind Josh Allen, and he's averaging 30.7 rushing yards per game. It extends the play, keeps those chains moving, and it's been very effective and have been a huge part of keeping the Chargers offense on the field, where they've been able to really, rack up that time of possession. Yeah. That's a big part of it. Another thing for me as it relates to Justin Herbert is I want to see them move the pocket. Like, move the pocket a little bit, get him on the run. He can throw accurately on the run. Slow those pass rushers down. Don't let them just have a clear, straight line to get after Justin Herbert. Let him use that mobility and that arm strength and that arm talent to be able to escape and be able to extend a little bit and to be able to hit, hopefully, open receivers.
Yeah, and I think the thing about moving the pocket is you better make sure that you're catching them off guard with it, right? Because when you do that, you're cutting off half of the field. So I'd probably do that, not in the direction of Derek Stingley, right? But yeah, I think, he knows he has to be better. He will have to be better in this one. And he's going up against the Texans defense that has forced 25 takeaways this year, ranking 3rd in the league. But last thing here, I just think the weapons have to show up. The new guys brought in to try to keep us from ever seeing the box score we saw in that game again, right? That's what I don't want to relive. Ladd, 9 for 197 and a touchdown to the next closest player being Will Dissly, with 2 catches for 16 yards and 2 drops. And I also think, David, another big part of this is Quentin Johnston showing his improvement, right? Because he's a guy that came up short in that game, straight up, right? 0 for 5 on 5 targets. Not all of them were great throws, right? Some of them he didn't even have a chance for, but they needed him in that game. And I know the offensive line was the biggest factor in why they lost that game, but not that far behind it was those Chargers weapons being completely outmatched outside of Ladd McConkey.
You're 100% right. They have to show up. Everybody has to do their part. They have to get open. They got to catch the football. Like, we can't have the ball glancing off of a receiver's hands in this game. It just can't happen. You have to make your catches. And yeah, Q's been a lot better at being able to track the ball over his shoulder, being able to go up and get the football, and just being more of a hands catcher this year. It's something that we have been able to see, and we know he's dangerous. And that's the other thing, the quick passing game. Get the ball out of Justin Herbert's hands quickly. That's something that has worked recently and needs to continue to be implemented in the game plan, especially with the obvious deficiencies of the offensive line is presenting you. Get that ball out, get it in the hands of a Quentin Johnston, into the hands of a Ladd McConkey, into the hands of a Rondé Gadsden, and let them go work after the catch.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a very athletic team they're going up against, right? And so I think part of the thing for the Chargers might just be like, I think it starts with trying to bully them, right? Like, I think it's just, hey, they're really fast and aggressive.
Get medieval.
What if we just bigger than them and stronger than them, right? And I think you start with that and see if you can open other things up, because I do think Oronde Gadsden over Will Dissly, as far as the main receiving option, might be the biggest upgrade this team has. So get the ball in the hands of your weapons for sure, but I think you have to maybe just soften them up by trying to bully them early on. But defensively, I think is where the Chargers have to win this game. I don't have a ton of faith in the Chargers offense going up against the machine they're going up against, but the Chargers defense has everything that they need to have a really good performance against this Texans offense, and I think they have to dominate to get the win. We're going to talk about that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. The holiday season is one of the best times in sports because bowl games are happening, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes, it's all happening at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and available in 45 states, including California, Texas, Florida, and Georgia. And creating a lineup takes less than a minute, and the app as a whole makes the process smooth and intuitive. And one of the things I love, the early payout feature. It's a great bonus because when your lineup starts strong, you may get the option to cash out early and secure that win. For this game, you could go with Justin Herbert to throw for more than or less than 216.5 passing yards, and you could pair that with Omarion Hampton having more than or less than 61.5 rushing yards. And we know potentially without Kamani Vidal, he should be getting a heavy workload. But all you have to do, download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. All right, David, well, it's time to start with the defensive side here, because I think that for this game, it could end up just being a rock fight. Like, truly, I think, the offense that maybe takes care of the ball better and doesn't help out the other offense might be the offense that wins this game, because I do think this is a battle, and the strength of each of these teams is their defense. And so, there is a chance this is a, 13-9 bar fight. It just could be that. This thing could get drug into the mud if these defenses have their way. And I think the nice thing is that the Chargers can win those type of games now and grit it out like they have against the Kansas City Chiefs or against the Philadelphia Eagles. But this is a defense, I think, unlike those that, the Chargers haven't seen. I think probably the closest thing is probably the Eagles, who are without Jalen Carter, which is a huge miss, right? And this team has better edge rushers than they do. But I think for the Chargers, defensively, you're going to have to go win this game. You just played the Cowboys offense, and, we'll see how this game goes. But that Cowboys offense is better than this Texans offense, for sure, right?
Oh, by a lot.
And you just shut them out in the second half. You shut out the Chiefs in the second half and the game before that. I think this Chargers defense has to be what wins this game, David. And I think that to do that, obviously, you have to get pressure on C.J. Stroud against a line that only gave up 6 pressures last week, but has some injuries. We'll see who plays. But the Chargers defense is combined for 60 pressures over the last 3 games. Those guys have to show up. And if the Chargers give up 10 points in this game, I think they're going to win. But if the Chargers defense kind of takes a step back in this game and they let the Texans get to 20, 24 points, then I think it becomes real dicey.
Yeah, I agree completely. It is a situation where I feel like the Chargers defense has an ability to dominate this offense. I feel like they have the secondary, they have the pass rushers, but to me, for the Chargers defense to look its best, it always starts with stopping the run. It always starts with stopping the run early, so that way they can earn the right to rush the passer. And I think that's always important. They have 2 running backs that have 500 plus rushing yards on the season, with Marks and with Chubb. Those guys, they're going to want to get the ball in their hands, and they're going to want to put them in better down and distances, just like the Chargers want to do. But the Chargers have 3 edge rushers that can get after the quarterback, and they can make life a living hell for C.J. Stroud. I love the Odafe Oweh addition, just because Tuli and Mack, they're going to get their stuff done. But that length and that athleticism from Odafe is something that is really been missing and has really showed itself for the Chargers defense. Get those guys, get that NASCAR package on the field and let them go to work.
Yeah, and as we've talked about before, that is where the Chargers really thrive. And by far, the highest pressure unit that they have, and nothing else is really close. Like the Chargers pass rush, when those three guys aren't all on the field at the same time, can be good, but they can't be great unless they can get into those obvious passing situations. And I do think the other part of that, to your point there, is corralling CJ Stroud, man. Like, because the thing is an underrated part of that first game was CJ Stroud using his legs. It's not necessarily what he's known for, but he had 6 carries for 42 yards in that game. And honestly, his scramble wasn't even the biggest play, right? It was the third down conversion where he fumbles it, and you just have no sort of pursuit there. And I think that's what looks a lot different to me this year than it did last year. Like, it's hard for me to believe that ball was on the ground as long as that was, and CJ Stroud still was able to get a pass off that clean on like a 3rd and 15 or whatever it was to convert it, because that felt like the turning point of that game.
Was.
You know, and that wasn't even one of his scrambles. He had a couple of keepers where he just torched them, you know, on 3rd downs and kept things going for that offense. Because the Chargers defense, I mean, you think about it, they had a pick 6. They scored another 6 points on, a field goal off of a turnover and another field goal off of a turnover on down. So, like, the Chargers offense kind of set them up for 13 points against them in that game. So it wasn't as bad as maybe the final score showed for that defense. But I do think it's a better unit this year. And I do think that they have to dominate. And I do think that they have to make this Texans defense one-dimensional, right? And that, to me, starts with, corralling CJ Stroud and stopping a rushing attack that has been very hot or cold, right? This is a rushing attack that's been held to 83 yards or less in 2 of their last 3. Last year, it was Joe Mixon, who was the bell cow guy for them, and went over 100 yards in that game and kind of just little by little chipped away at the Chargers' chances to get back, and they were an effective running team last year. But the nice thing is over the Chargers' last 10 games, they've been a lot better at not allowing quarterbacks to run. Over the last 10 games, the Chargers are only allowing quarterbacks to run on average for 6.4 yards per game. Like, that's just monumental difference in what happened, especially in their losses. When you look at what Jackson Dart did to them, when you look at what Jaden Daniels did to them, Patrick Mahomes had that big scramble for the touchdown for 12 yards, and then they only got like 13 or 14 total quarterback rushing yards in that game. So they've been a lot better at it. I think the pursuit's been a lot better. I think Odafe Oweh is a big reason for that too. But to me, in a game like this where I think your offense is challenged, I'm looking for this Chargers defense to force 2 takeaways, because that's been the other common denominator from when this defense has been really, really good. It's taking the football away, and the Texans have gone 3 straight games without a giveaway right now, and they only have 10 this year. So it's going to be really tough to do, but I think the Chargers' best chances offensively are going to be if you can set them up for some easy points and help them out with your defense. Your defense is the strength. You get those takeaways, you're either taking points off the board or setting your own offense up for points. So I think even though it's tough, I think they need to get 2 takeaways to win this game.
Yeah, and in 3 of the 5 Texans losses so far this season, they have lost the turnover battle. So it is definitely critically important to try to take the football away, create a short field for your offense. That's always going to bode well against a very, very good defense. Like, that's definitely something you want to do
for both sides.
Yeah, we can't talk about a key for success on defense without talking about Nico Collins, right? That's the biggest weapon that the Houston Texans have to deploy. For me, it's double Nico Collins. I mean, do not let him, and I remember saying this pretty much the exact same thing when the Chargers were playing the Texans the first time around in the playoffs. Yeah. You know who the offensive catalysts are for this team. It's Nico Collins and it's Dalton Schultz. Do not allow these guys to take over and be the offensive identity for the Houston Texans, because they are going to be looking for them. They are going to try to get them the football. Double Nico as much as you humanly possibly can. Don't let him go nuclear, and stick Derwin James on Dalton Schultz and let him try to go get some stuff done against one of the best coverage safeties and all-around defensive players in the National Football League. That's what I want to see. Make anybody else beat you. Do not let those 2 guys be the Texans offense.
Yeah, it's something that's pretty, positive, I would say, even this early on in the week, is that Dante Jackson was able to fully participate at practice, which, after leaving the last game, we all hold your breath, because he's been, one of just the legitimately best cornerbacks in the league period this season, and another defensive bargain that this Chargers defense has just taken from the damaged good department and turned into like a borderline all-pro player this year. So they have their own right on the other side. A couple of them, Kamari Laster and Derek Stingley, who didn't practice so far this week.
Yeah, they have like 3 or 4 guys that have 4 picks apiece.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. And the Chargers, they have two of those guys, Tony Jefferson and Dante Jackson. You feel a lot better that that guy is going to be in this game when you're going to, and like I said, need to get a couple of takeaways. But I do think that in the last game, one of the turning points was when Cam Hart got injured. In that game, I thought he was doing a decent job against Nico Collins. Yeah. He's going to get a fair amount of him because of the size. Had a rougher game against George Pickens last week, right? Got a few times. It's going to be up to him to have, a better game if that's what he's going to be looking at, so in this game, if he's going to be getting that matchup, which I do think he will. But we still have to get into our bold and our game predictions and talk about what it's going to take to win this game. We'll get into that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. All right, David, well, now it's time to get into what the everydayers think is going to happen in this one and get bold with some crazy predictions, and we've already had several that have come true so far this year. And thank you to everyone who hit us up at Locked On LAC or at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, at Locked On LAC on Twitter, of course, or called into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924. But I do want to start with this one here from Brizzy, who says, Oronde Gadsden takes a page from the Ladd McConkey book, going crazy against the Texans defense with 10 catches, 110 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Man, would I love to see that.
That would be awesome to see. Unfortunately, the Texans have been really, really good against tight ends, and it's just that, they have so many guys that they can put out there and cover guys that, there's just not a lot of room out there for the tight ends. And I love Oronde, and I hope they do definitely give him and get him involved, have a couple of plays that feature him, because he is dangerous in the open field. He has really strong hands, does have an ability to, go up and get it, and, is physical at the catch point. All things that you want in a receiver to be involved in your offense for sure. If that happens, I will be extremely surprised and overjoyed, because if that does happen, that means that offensive success against the Dallas Cowboys carried over against the Houston Texans.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the one thing that was the equalizer last time, I think, was just the speed of the linebackers, the total team defensive speed that they have, and also just the fact that they just play mean, right? So far this year, tight ends averaging 5 catches for 45 yards, but they did got a couple of weeks ago by Trey McBride. They gave up 15 catches for 138 yards in that game to tight ends only a couple of weeks ago. So I feel like Oronde Gadsden, in the last game, Will Dissly should have had, a 3rd and 17 conversion in that game, and another big play that he dropped, plus the 2 catches he did have. That was a big part of the game plan. Tucker Fisk, the first catch of the game, goes for a chunk play, right? We know that'll be part of the game plan, especially if they go big. Oronde Gadsden can get his, and I think unlike last week where they had enough guys kind of succeeding everywhere, so only needed 1 catch, I think they need him more this week, because I do think it's going to be hard to, find these chunks, find these easy completions, and mostly guys who can make contested catches, right? Like when you're going up against a team who's going to really limit the, separation that your receivers get, Justin Herbert can fit it anywhere. You just have to be able to catch it and make some tough catches. And the Chargers outside of line just didn't have that last year, right? So I do think that for this game, you need those guys to be making some tough catches, because it's not going to be easy against this
there's not going to be much separation.
And like I said, they tried to target Will Dissly a lot last year, and it didn't work out for them. That's a big upgrade this year with Oronde Gadsden taking that role. But this is from Jackson here, who says, Omarion Hampton, 200 total offensive yards and 2 scores. He will shoulder the load and carry this offense. David, that is, kind of what we had in mind when we made Omarion the lead for this. And I don't think he's going to get 200 yards necessarily, because that would just be his best career game against the best defense in the NFL.
Yeah.
Potentially. But I do kind of agree that he should be kind of the engine for the offense today, like we talked about.
Yeah, I want him to be the catalyst. I think you've seen his touches increase game over game just a little bit, but now I think it's time to really take the training wheels off and let him go. I think it's time for him to be the workhorse back, especially with Kamani Vidal having some issues with the neck injury. They obviously signed Jarrett Patterson to the active roster, which kind of signifies that injury may be a little more serious than we know about, just based off of the roster construction. So I want Omarion Hampton to be a major catalyst, and even throwing a couple of screens in there. I like how it's total yards, because I just want to get the ball in his hands, because I feel like this is a guy who's no fun to tackle for anybody, no matter how violent or how physical the defense is.
Well, I think like the Chargers just kind of got manhandled. You know what I mean?
Oh, they did.
Yeah. Omarion Hampton isn't the type to get manhandled. Like he is how you answer that physicality that they're going to bring, and we'll see who wants it more.
And the extra offensive line sets too. Yeah, bring Trevor Penning in there and let him go knock some heads.
I totally agree, and like obviously the one holding call he had last week was terrible, but like
ridiculous.
The false start is also inexcusable, and the time that he did it, right, in the 3rd and 1, where you're probably not even going to be much of a part of that play. So he has to be better in that regard. But yeah, I think that's exactly what you tried to do, and then you make them try to adjust to that, and then maybe it opens some other things up. But I agree with your point, Jackson, where he should be a huge part of this week. Let's get to this one from Goaty, who says, bold prediction, Justin Herbert will have 0 turnovers. That's all the Chargers need for a W. What do you think?
I would agree with that. I think that's a very, very good sentiment, because, if Justin Herbert protects the ball and he makes good throws, makes good decisions just overall, right? Makes good decisions, doesn't give a bad Texans offense a short field, that's definitely going to bode well for the Chargers and their offensive output. So, yeah, I mean, you know that Justin Herbert's going to be very conscious and hopefully make better, stronger decisions, with also having the confidence in his running ability to be able to escape and go get extra yards when they're there and when it's needed.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem so simple, right? But like I think it really kind of underlines how important it'll be for them not to help out the Texans offense in this game, because the Texans offense also a couple weeks ago put up a 40 burger. You know what I mean? That's something the Chargers haven't done all season. So like that's an offense that can score, but your defense should be able to handle it. Like I said, it's not as good as the offense you had last week, but I do think that for Justin Herbert, if he has 0 turnovers in this game, I think they have a pretty good chance to win it. It's just going to be really, really hard to do, especially with the uncertainty surrounding 2 of his potential starting offensive linemen up in the air as far as if they're going to be able to play, and Jamari Sawyer and Mekhi Becton, who have both missed practice this week. So let's get to this one here from Jose Alto, who says, Odafe Oweh sacks C.J. Stroud twice and Teair Tart gets 2 tackles for loss. I love both of these guys. I love this bold prediction.
Absolutely, me too. When you put it in here, I was like, yes, that's definitely one I want to go with. I love Odafe Oweh's athleticism. We've seen him chase down some quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes already this year. Love to see him do that very same thing to C.J. Stroud.
Yeah.
Just go hunt him and get him on the ground and make his life miserable for 60 full minutes. And we all know how Teair Tart likes to play football. He brings that attitude, that little bit of nastiness, that energy, and I can absolutely see it. It seems like he's good for at least 1 tackle for loss every single game, just shooting that gap and getting the ball carrier on the ground. You're going to need those. You're going to need those, because this right here is as close to a playoff game in the regular season that you are going to get. This has tremendous stakes for the Chargers, and they're going to need all of the big-time plays that their defense can provide.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is you're trying to make up a pretty substantial gap. It wasn't close when these 2 teams played last year, which is why, if you can come back this year and beat what's arguably a better defense than they had last year this year, right, and beat that team this year, I think it just shows you how much of an improvement you've made. I mean, you have your own win streak. That Texas team has won 6 games in a row too. They don't care about your 4-game win streak. This
Not
is
at
a
all.
good to great team you're going up against right now that had such a good defense that they were able to win games with Davis Mills at quarterback.
Yeah.
A backup going 3-0, I believe, during that stretch. So this is a really, really good team they're playing up against. For Odafe Oweh, who has, one of the biggest improvements you have from last year this year from an athleticism standpoint, right? And being able to track down someone like C.J. Stroud is great. And then Teair Tart, obviously one of the most underrated run defenders in the league. Getting the Texans behind the sticks would be huge. But now it's time to put our name on it, David, and say what we think is going to happen. And man, I'm so torn on this game. This is about as much of a coin flip game as I can remember so far this year, just because we saw what Liam Cohen did to the Chargers, right? As a Buccaneer, and then this year as a Jaguar, right? And we've talked about certain teams just having the Chargers number, and it feels like the Texans, we can go back to Rex Burkhead, right, in the COVID game. We can go back to every game since then. Like, it just feels like the Texans have the Chargers number. I think the Chargers are a better team this year, and I think they've showed it, right? Like, I don't see them getting blown out in this game. I see it probably being a defensive battle, but I think the uncertainty, like if Austin Deckles plays in this game and you have him going up against Danielle Hunter, right, and Will Anderson, like I just don't know if there's going to be anything you can do. Like this is a Texans defense that every single one of their offensive linemen, including Joe Walton, Rashawn Slater, all gave up 3+ pressures the last time these teams matched up, right? And it was almost unwatchable. And it took 197 yards from Ladd McConkey to not make it like a shutout. Like, I don't know. I think it's close, but I don't think the Chargers pull it out. I'm going to say Texans 17, Chargers 15. I hope that you're picking the Chargers.
That's an interesting score right there for sure. I do agree that it is going to be a low-scoring affair. But I will say I have more confidence in the Chargers defense to shut down the Houston Texans offense than I do the other way around. So with that being said, the way that the Chargers are playing, the way that they are figuring out how to make adjustments in game to the benefit to make it so they can win games, I think they are going to be able to do that same thing. I think they're going to be able to do enough offensively, and I think they're going to completely dominate defensively, and I think that's going to result in them setting up a date with the Denver Broncos for the AFC West division with a win over the Texans by a score of 17-13.
I hope they can do it too. I mean, keep Phillip Rivers' playoff chances alive, and we get to see him one more game this week. You know, another added benefit to it. Yeah, I hope they can play for the division in Week 18. It's just something I can't shake, man. And I gave him the benefit of the doubt against the Jaguars, right? Where I'm like, this is different, like a totally different team. This is, you know, I think this is one of the worst matchups. I would rather play the Patriots than the Texans.
Sure.
I'd rather play the Broncos than the Texans. I'd almost
but
rather
if they
play
win this
the
game,
Bills than the Texans. But if they win this game, they'll have fully proven it to me. If they win this game, I won't have these reservations again. You know what I mean? Because this kind of really gets rid of the last of that scar tissue. And I think for me, like, I still think it's going to be a lot closer, right? Like, and
it is.
We were way off and sounded way wrong when that game happened last year. Right?
Did.
We wanted the Texans. I'm going to be a little bit more reserved this time around. And I always say what I think is going to happen. But for this one, it's not even that I just feel like they're 100% going to lose. I just feel like it's a super, coin flip type of game, and I just feel really uncertain. If Austin Deckles is starting at left tackle, I don't know how I can pick them to win, knowing what he's going to be going up against on Sunday. And sometimes it's as simple as that. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. A little bit different this week, so make sure you're back here tomorrow for Crossover Thursday. Locked on Chargers, Locked on Texans, with revenge on the brain. So make sure you guys are back here for that by subscribing or following for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listening wherever you get your podcast from, as well as finding the show every day on all of our social media at Locked On LAC on Twitter, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. I will be the first one ready to eat some crow on Saturday night. If we do a live show after a win, I think we'll have to. I think we will have to, and you guys can, I'll eat some crow live on air. But yeah, I hope I'm wrong. I think this Chargers team is better. I think they're more equipped, but man, if you're down to your fifth, sixth string tackle again against that defense, I just think it could be a bloodbath. And my biggest concern is just Justin Herbert getting out of this game alive to see what this playoff run looks like. But that's going to wrap things up for today's show. Make sure you're back here tomorrow for Crossover Thursday. Until then, take it easy and go Bolts.